I think you need to hire someone, don't you?
So I do think that individuals should hire someone if they are unsure about how their tax situation is handled. And every state can be different. So if you are earning income in a different state because you may have moved due to coronavirus, you want to update your information with your employer to make sure that you also have withholding for that new state as well, because different states have different tax rates. So to ensure that you are not overpaying in state taxes, you want to make sure you're updating your state as you move.
I mean, I think that a lot of us have this problem. I don't know where I am, to be honest. I mean, people realize that probably. But so I'm in the NASDAQ. I live in New Jersey. Sometimes I work remotely in New Jersey. Everybody's working remotely. Do all the states, they all want to get involved. They all want they'd all like the taxes, wouldn't they? How can you possibly know? Do you have to keep track of when you're in one state versus the other?
So you definitely should, because each state has different thresholds for the amount of days that you can stay in that state without being considered a resident. So if you are temporarily visiting in a state and you are working in that state for your job, so if your job positions you in that state for a reason, to be staffed on a client or an engagement, you should be updating your information to have taxes withheld for that state. But when it comes down to file taxes, you are going to file a non-resident tax return unless you exceed that number of days that that state specifies. That will trigger you to have to also file a resident return for that state.
I can't imagine that the IRS is really in top shape right now to be dealing with this either, are they?
So right now, the IRS is increasing their staffing, and they are kind of backed up since last year due to stimulus checks and paper file returns. And it's been a lot, but the IRS and state are actually two separate governments. So the IRS is going to handle your whole 1040 return, while your state handles only their state return. So even though they're separate, you filing on time does influence how quickly you can get a response from each entity.
Sharon, it's just way too complicated. I'm just going to blow the whole thing off, I think. Is that an option for me, do you think? No?
It's not an option for you, Joe. And more importantly, the best option is to file as early as you can, because as was just mentioned, we don't know how much of a backlog there may be, but there definitely will be a backlog if everyone waits until April 15th. As of now, that is the tax filing deadline, just as it always was, except for last year. So you want to make sure to get it in as early as possible. And the other caveat that a lot of people are talking about in the CPA community is concern about identity theft. And a way to avoid that is to make sure that your return is the one that the IRS or your state government sees first, and not some imposter, because they're not going to know who it is. And if you're due the return, or that tax return says that you're due a refund, then you're going to get it. So you want to make sure that you file as early as possible to get the refund as soon as possible. And as I mentioned, that recovery rebate credit, if you're due that, the earlier you file, that's better for you.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.